And we're on in three, two, and one.
Under blue moon I saw you, so soon you'll take me. Up in your arms, too late to beg you, or cancel it though I know it must be. The killing time, unwillingly mine. Fate, up against your will, through the thick and thin, he will wait until you give yourself to him.
And I'm hearing the song as I go through my head as they're going through it.
You give yourself to him.
Welcome to episode 135 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 135. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. We bought a new bed.
Okay.
So when we left Denton, we sold all of our bedroom furniture because Chelsea just wanted, it was older and wanted to get something new and
Okay.
wanted to wait
New
till we got,
house, new bed.
wanted to wait till we got to the new house and everything. So we went out shopping and everything, and we did end up purchasing a new mattress and a new bedroom set. Um, Here's what I can say about that. It's fucking the price of a fucking car to get that kind of shit. It's
Really?
crazy how expensive that shit is. Crazy. Just unbelievable. I mean, granted, you want a nice mattress to sleep on and things like that, but it can just get crazy. Now, I mean, it didn't hurt that we kind of bought a top of the line mattress and everything. It's got
Mm-hmm.
speakers in it and massaging in it and all kinds of
Oh.
stuff.
Oh. Yeah.
It's pretty high tech, and it even has an app that tells you how you slept and everything like that. It's pretty wild, but it's just unbelievable how crazy expensive that shit gets.
Are you getting a good sleep?
I'm getting used to it still. I didn't the first night at all. I get just getting used to it. It's got a zero gravity setting that is supposed to be really good for you. I haven't really been able to sleep with that yet. I'm prefer to be straight out. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know, but it's just I just had to share that how just incredibly expensive that is. Also dove into a couple of new TV series, not new TV series, but old. We're going back and we're watching Daredevil because neither of us watched the third season, and so we're going
Oh
back.
God, I love the Daredevil.
So good, so good. I'd forgotten just how good it is. Um, but the other show we've been watching, which is more of a lighthearted fare, and it's a lot of fun if you haven't watched it, is Ballers.
Oh yeah, Ballers is funny.
Have you watched it?
Yeah, Ballers is funny.
I like The Rock. I really do. And that's been a funny show. I spend so much time during that show when they're dealing with the various football players and their stuff, just going, man, y'all are stupid. Y'all are just stupid. So that's a funny one. I recommend both of those shows if you haven't gotten into there. We're only in the second season of Ballers, and we're in the first season of Daredevil, so we're kind of watching it off and on. Right now, we're just biding our time until the rookie is back out in February. So
Yes, new rookie.
can't
Are we
wait.
getting new rookie feds?
No, it got canceled,
Damn it.
and
Well,
it sucks that it got canceled.
I figure they'll bring him back for episodes though.
I would think so as well. Uh, uh, ABC slash Disney, whatever, because of the writer's strike and everything like that, they decided they had to trim off some of the fat, and rookie feds got cut.
Rookie feds is some of the fat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's bad because I didn't think it was as good as the rookie,
Mm-hmm.
but I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
I really wish they would change their minds on that and bring that out because I think those are two good companion shows to to put together. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's all I got. You got anything for the kids?
Yeah.
The
Me and the
kids?
kids did go roller skating last weekend. That was a lot of fun. I sent some pictures, made a TikTok. We had a good time. Missed roller skating. I was only able to do it for about 30 minutes. And then my knees gave out. I think it may have something to do with the fact that it was really cold outside.
Yeah.
But yeah. but I was able to do a little roller skating. Got a little backward skating in. Been a while since I've been able to do that.
Mhm.
So just because I forgot how.
Yeah, as we said in a previous episode, I'm tired of this cold. I'm ready for the mild temperatures to come back.
Yes.
It is cold and rainy today, and that interferes with my golfing.
No.
So sucks. So all right, well, I will let you step over on the nerdery side of the house.
Excellent. Today we're going to talk
Nerder,
nerder.
nerder.
I like it. We should do that. Uh, today we're going to talk about 3 albums by Echo and the Bunnymen, which is a ridiculous name.
Yeah.
So Echo and the Bunnymen is or the Bunnymen is an English rock band formed in Liverpool in 1978. The original lineup consisted of vocalist Ian McCulloch, guitarist Will Sargent, and bassist Les Pattinson. By 1980, Peter DeFreitas joined the band as the band's drummer. And that one band that I played that one time you thought was really good, um, the Heartthrobs, those are Peter DeFreitas' sisters.
Okay.
The 1980 debut album Crocodiles went into the top 20 of the UK album charts after its release. Their second album, Heaven Up Here, in 1981, the band's cult status was followed by mainstream success in the UK in '83 when they scored a UK top 10 hit with The Cutter, and the album with which the song came from, Porcupine, hit number 2 in the UK. Their next album, Ocean Rain, which was released in 1984, continued the band's UK chart success with its lead single, The Killing Moon, entering into the top 10. After they released a self-titled album in 1987, Ian McCulloch left the band and was replaced by singer Noel Burke. In 1989, Peter DeFreitas was killed in a motorcycle accident. After working together as Electrofixation, McCulloch and Sargent regrouped with Pattinson in 1997 and returned as Echo and the Bunnymen before Pattinson's departure in 1998. The band has done some touring and released several albums since the late 1990s to varying degrees of success. The 3 albums we're talking about today are going to be Porcupine, Ocean Rain, and the eponymous Echo and the Bunnymen album, which in my mind are probably the best work that those guys did. Ian McCulloch began his career in 1977 as one-third of the Crucial Three, a bedroom band which also featured Julian Cope and Pete Wiley. When Wiley left, McCulloch and Cope formed a short-lived A Shallow Madness with drummer Dave Pickert and organist Paul Simpson, during which time such songs as Read It in Books, Robert Mitchum, You Think It's Love, and Space Hopper were written by the pair. When McCulloch left the band, A Shallow Madness changed their name to The Teardrop Explodes and went on to be pretty famous in England. It's usually referred to as Julian Cope, and the Teardrop Explodes, or sometimes just Julian Cope. But they were great. One of my favorite songs is by those guys. McCulloch then joined with guitarist Will Sargent and bass player Les Pattinson to form Echo and the Bunnymen. The early incarnation of the band featured a drum machine assumed by many to be Echo, though this has been denied by the band. In the 1982 book Liverpool Explodes, Will Sargent explained the origin of the band's name. He says, and I quote, "We had this mate who kept suggesting all these names like the Dazmen or Glycerol and the Fan Extractors. Echo and the Bunnymen was one of them. I thought it was just as stupid as the rest, but it looked cool on a poster." So that's what they went with. Echo is not for the drum machine. In November 1978, Echo and the Bunnymen made their debut at Liverpool's Eric's Club, appearing as the opening act of the Teardrop Explodes, the band that formed out of the essentially the Crucial Three. The band played one song, a 20-minute version of Monkeys, which was entitled Begsy Yours at the time. So, yeah, Eric's in Liverpool was a very famous post-punk and post-punk club. There is a very famous album by Yazoo in England, or Yaz here, called Upstairs at Eric's, because Eric's was an underground club and there were apartments above it that some of those people lived in. Upstairs at Eric's is referring to that club. Porcupine is the third studio album by the English post-punk band Echo and the Bunnymen, first released on the 4th of February 1983, and it became the band's highest charting release when it reached number 2 on the UK album charts, despite initially receiving poor reviews. It also reached number 137 on the American Billboard 200, number 85 in the Canadian RPM 100 albums, number 24 in the Swedish chart in 1984. The album was certified gold by the British phonographic industry. The album includes the singles The Back of Love and The Cutter. So the album's tracks are The Cutter, The Back of Love, The White Devil, Clay, Porcupine, Heads Will Roll, Ripeness, Higher Hell, Gods Will Be Gods, and In Bluer Skies. What did you think about the album Porcupine?
Two things. First of all, completely not related to this at all.
Okay.
But if you haven't seen this, if you haven't seen it, please look it up. I love the clips of Family Feud when people tell Steve Harvey some of the weirdest shit. And the question on this particular one was, tell me a word that follows the word pork. And one of the guys said, "You pine."
Porcupine.
If you've never seen that clip, please watch it because Steve Harvey goes banana ape shit over that one. That's so funny.
Porcupine.
I wasn't familiar with any of the songs on this one. I listened to it. They weren't bad. I didn't think they were great.
No, they're not there yet
You
with
know,
Porcupine.
no, and and one of the things, because I always look things up on Spotify, that I found interesting. Um, Only two songs on there showed substantial plays, and that was "The Cutter" and "Back of Love."
The Back of Love. Yeah, the two singles.
The rest of them didn't even crack a million plays. So
Yeah.
and I can kind of see why. I didn't think this was great. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. The Cutter and the Back of Love are good songs, but this album's not there yet. It was like when we talked about Depeche Mode. It that album was missing something. That first album that we talked about was missing something. The next one had more of it, and the third one had all of it together.
Mm-hmm.
Porcupine is like that. I like The Cutter. I like The Back of Love. I like In Bluer Skies too. The rest of it, I can kind of take or leave. I don't hate it, and I wouldn't turn it off, but I'm not going to actively go out and seek it. The Cutter and The Back of Love, which are amazing live, by the way, if you've never heard it. Live, they're put on a great live show. Will Sargent is still an incredible guitar player. And I think on the tour, that summer tour that I saw them with the Violent Femmes on, Lee Pattinson was with them as well. So, I mean, it was like old home week. They are Liverpudlian, so they sound like the Beatles. Ian McCullough has a beautiful singing voice, even though it's kind of raw, kind of rough. It's not classically beautiful, but it is hauntingly beautiful.
Yeah.
When he speaks, he's almost impossible to understand. Matter of fact, he even made fun of us and him. He said something on the microphone. He's like, "Do you understand that?" And we were all like, "No!" He's like, "Why not? It's English." And then I think he went into The Back of Love right after that. So, but yeah, no, I'm with you. The Porcupine is not quite there. I love the album cover art on it. They were getting with the same person to do the album cover art for all three of these albums, and it's picture of the band, but in an unusual kind of way. The next album, I think, is the peak or the pinnacle of what they were able to do. The next album, which is the fourth album, Ocean Rain. It is an album by the English post-punk band Echo and the Bunnymen. It was released on May the 4th, 1984. So yeah, they released Porcupine in February of '83 and May of '84 for Ocean Rain. It reached number 4 in the UK album charts, number 87 in the United States Billboard 200, number 41 on the Canadian RPM 100 albums, and number 22 on the Swedish charts. Since 1984, the album has been certified gold by the British phonographic industry. Ocean Rain includes the singles The Killing Moon, Silver, and Seven Seas. Seven Seas. Again, Ian McCullough is Liverpudlian. It took me years to understand what the hell he was saying. Seven Seas, My Fate Among Them, Kissing the Tortoise Shell. That is not the way he sings it.
Mm.
He says tortoise. For years, I had no idea what the hell that meant. And I finally busted out the lyrics and I was like, oh, he's saying tortoise. Okay. He can't say tortoise. He says tortoise. Or maybe, and this is what I'm thinking, tortoise sounds better in the song. Maybe. Could be. Maybe it was just the, it was like, I'm sorry, Ian. I believe the word is pronounced tortoise. I like the way it sounds better this way. And that's what they went with. So I don't know. I'm curious. I guess if I ever met Ian McCullough, I'd ask him to pronounce the word tortoise. But the band wrote songs for this new album in 1983. In early '84, they recorded most of the album in Paris using a 35-piece orchestra, with other sessions taking place in Bath and Liverpool, their hometown. It received mixed reviews. The album was originally released as an LP and a cassette in May of 1984 before it was reissued on CD in August. The album was reissued on CD in 2003 along with the other 4 of the band's first 5 studio albums, having been remastered and expanded before again being reissued in 2008 with live bonus disc. The artwork for the album was designed by Martin Atkins, and the photography was by Brian Griffin, who'd done the other photography for the last album and the next album as well. Echo and the Bunnymen played a number of concerts in 2008 where they performed Ocean Rain in full with the backing of an orchestra. Now, Ocean Rain only has 9 songs on it. Silver, Nocturnal Me, Crystal Days, The Yo-Yo Man, Thorn of Crowns, The Killing Moon, Seven Seas, My Kingdom, and Ocean Rain. The Killing Moon may be the best song they've ever done.
Agreed.
The story about how The Killing Moon was written is weird. And Ian McCullough is so proud of that song, but he doesn't like to take credit for it. So he was asleep, right? He had a pad and pen next to his bed in his nightstand. That's what he says. He never does that. There just happened to be one. He woke up, wrote out the lyrics for The Killing Moon, and went back to bed. When he got up the next morning, he had the lyrics in his own hand, but he doesn't really remember writing them down. He knew he got up and wrote something down, but he couldn't really remember what it was. And when they went to record it and put music to it, the lyrics basically stayed roughly the same. They changed a few, just, because sometimes you want to change the way you say something or the cadence of it or a little bit of the lyrics. But he's so proud of that song because he feels like that song is one of those songs that lasts forever. But he's also kind of sad because he doesn't feel like he can take credit for it because he doesn't know where it came from. He wrote it out of essentially a fever dream, but he doesn't remember writing it down. He knew he wrote something, but doesn't remember exactly what it was. And I've heard him say that in a few interviews, is that song will live forever. It's one of those songs because it's so good. He likes the other songs too, but he doesn't know where the song came from.
Well, and this album was obviously has more airplay than Porcupine.
Mm-hmm. Upine.
Upine. I like this album. Of course, The Killing Moon is, I agree, is probably their greatest song. But it's it's funny when you look at this album because In the previous one, most of the songs on Spotify didn't have more than 1 million plays. All of them have more than 1 million on here. But when you talk about the Killing Moon, so the lowest listened to song on this album had just over 1 million.
Yo-Yo Man.
Yes, Yo Yo Man,
Hmm.
just over 1 million. Then you go to several others that are below 2 million. Then you go to Silver, which is almost 3 million.
Hmm.
Ocean Rain, which is over 3 million. Seven Seas, which is over 11 million. The Killing Moon, 167 million.
Yep.
So far, well, and then there's Nocturnal Me, which got over 13 million. Just so far difference from
Oh
all
yeah.
the others, but it's a great song.
Yeah.
It's a good album, but the Killing
Yeah.
Moon is great.
I think this is where they were at their peak. I like the next album, the Echo and the Bunnymen album. Uh, believe it or not, at the time, the single off of that actually was bigger over here than anything off of Ocean Rain. But I think
Mm-hmm.
Ocean Rain is the bomb diggity.
Yeah.
You know, uh, down to the album cover where they're basically sitting on a boat on a little river in a cave. Um, uh, I just love this album. I would say with that, the Yo-Yo Man is kind of experimental, which is why I figured it didn't have a whole lot of views. I like it, but I think it was more like a jam session. Um, but yeah, I can listen to this whole album over and over and over again, just like the Smiths' first album, just like Violator by Depeche Mode. It's one of those albums that's it just hits on all cylinders. Um, and shortly after this, they did a compilation album that they released. I think they only released it over here to kind of garner some biz for their new upcoming album. It's called Songs to Learn and Sing. Um, Also a photograph of the band, but all walking in silhouette, taken by that same photographer. It's a great album cover. Um, that's the one that most of the people here got into.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were Killing Moon was on one of the Just Say Yes compilation albums released by I want to say Mute over here, one of the record companies. Um, they basically put a bunch of English new wave bands on these albums. It was Just Say Yes, Just Say No, Just Say Yo, Just Say Mao. Um, but it had a whole bunch of really cool stuff on it. Killing Moon was on one of those as well as Seven Seas. Then they released the to learn songs to learn and sing. Sorry, um, you'd think I'd know the name of it since I wore a cassette of it out, but songs to learn and songs to learn and sing uh, was basically my introduction to them, and then I got Ocean Rain, and then Echo and the Bunnymen. Um, I think Ocean Rain is better, but as far as compilation albums go, Songs to Learn and Sing is pretty awesome. But yeah, The Killing Moon is just I can't say enough about it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys need to listen to it right now. Go listen to it right now. Okay, they've listened to it. Now they know what I'm talking about. The next album in our list is Echo in and the Bunnymen. It's the fifth studio album by the English post-punk band Echo and the Bunnymen, and their last with drummer Peter DeFreitas, who died in 1989 in a motorcycle accident. The album, part of the 27 Club, too, by the way. The album was produced by Laurie Latham. The sessions took place in Germany, Belgium, London, and Liverpool following an aborted attempt at recording the tracks without DeFreitas and with producer Gil Norton. With Latham being an exacting producer, the singer Ian McCullough received star treatment, and drinking heavily they recorded was more difficult than the band had initially hoped. The album which made more use of keyboards than their previous album, which had been string heavy. 3 singles were issued: The Game, Lips Like Sugar, and Bedbugs and Ballyhoo. Lips Like Sugar at the time charted higher than The Killing Moon. And although Echo and the Bunnymen was successful in the United Kingdom and to a lesser degree the US, it received mixed reviews from the music press following its release in July of 87. So it took them 3 years to make this album. The album reached number 4 in the UK album charts and has been certified silver by the British phonographic industry. British pornographic industry. It's a lot of T. In North America, it reached number 51 on the U.S. Billboard Top 200 and number 51 on the Canadian Top 100. In Europe, it stayed in the European album charts for 8 weeks, peaked at number 36 on its 4th week. Recording the tracks that were to appear on the Echo and the Bunnymen began at Coney Plank Studio in Cologne. Both Echo and the Bunnymen and their label, Warner Brothers Records, were unhappy with the results of the Norton sessions with Palmer playing drums. Keen to record again with DeFreitas, the band decided to scrap the Norton sessions and to start recording a new album with Latham, who had previously worked on the band on their 1985 single, Bring on the Dancing Horses, which is on the Songs to Learn and Sing. The session moved from Cologne to ICP Studios in Brussels before returning to Cologne and finished off at the Workhouse in London and Amazon Studios in Liverpool. The band hoped that the album would be a collection of simple songs. However, Latham was very specific and exacting, and he would work on one song for as long as a month. Recording was also complicated by the star treatment received by McCullough that, along with his heavy drinking, alienated him from the rest of the band. In a 1995 interview, guitarist Will Sargent said of McCullough's treatment, "We just found it all ridiculous. He had people running around behind him basically wiping his arse." McCullough later said in a 1987 interview, "I knew I was losing it. I was on another planet, but when I didn't want to be on the one the other Bunnymen were on." While making the album, the band recorded a version of The Doors' 1967 People Are Strange for the soundtrack for the 1987 film The Lost Boys. Ray Manzarek, former keyboardist and keyboard player with The Doors, was brought in to provide keyboards for the song. While in the studio, he also contributed keyboarding to a re-recording of Bedbugs and Ballyhoo, which has previously been the B-side for the 12-inch version of Bring on the Dancing Horses. Once Echo and the Bunnymen had been recorded, the band's management company, Direct Management, decided to have it mixed by Bruce Lamkov in the U.S. While the album was mixed, the band was on tour in Brazil and listened to the finished tracks over the telephone. Latham moved the band away from use of strings, which featured heavily on Ocean Rain and to a lesser extent on Porcupine, and introduced keyboards to the melody of the tracks. DeFreitas' drumming was contained and discreet, and McCullough's vocals were more restrained. Although the album contained hook-heavy tracks such as Lips Like Sugar, the guitarists on tracks such as Lost and Found are more representative of the album as a whole. I'd agree with that. The resulting album was disliked by the entire band, described in 87 was he thought of as the production of the album. Sargent described it as an overcooked fish. Les Pattinson said, "I like the songs, I just hated the mixes." And in 95, McCullough said, "It still sounds like crap." There are 11 songs on this album. They are The Game, Over You, Bedbugs and Ballyhoo, All in Your Mind, Bomber's Bay, Lips Like Sugar, Lost and Found, New Direction, Blue Blue Ocean, Satellite, and All My Life. Lips Like Sugar was a huge hit on the indie charts here. So was Bedbugs and Ballyhoo, even though it's kind of a jazz tune. They usually open their shows with Bedbugs and Ballyhoo, though, just because it's just such a smooth groove. Again, it's got that jazzy sound to it. What did you think about this album?
Well, Lips Like Sugar is the only one I knew before listening to this album. I don't know. This album was okay.
Mm-hmm. But not as good as Ocean Rain, right?
Definitely not as good as Ocean Rain. This is not one I could listen to over and over, except for Lips Like Sugar. That's a good song.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just this album was okay. It was okay to me. I just not that great.
Yeah.
Not that great.
I don't think it's necessarily overproduced, but I just don't think they were. I don't think they were clicking on all 8 cylinders when they made it. You know what I mean? I mean, again, I love Lips Like Sugar. I love Bedbugs and Ballyhoo. I love Blue Blue Ocean too. Not a
Hmm.
lot of people do, but I just think it's nice and moody. Um, it's a good it's a good record to put on when it's raining outside. Um, it had a happier tone than Ocean Rain, but uh, I kind of like Ocean Rain better. I can just sit and listen to Ocean Rain, put it on in the background. It's awesome. Not so much this one. I kind of have to seek it out.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's not a bad album. It's better than some other albums I heard that came out in 1987 by a long shot. And I think of a lot of people over here when I they would ask me, "Hey, what are you listening to?" "Oh, it's Echo and the Bunnymen." They giggle because it's a dumb name for a band, but I think that may have had some effect on how well they were received over here. It's not like the Smiths or the Cure or
Hmm.
Depeche Mode. You can get behind those. Echo and the Bunnymen sounds like a garage band, but they're not. It's just they had a bunch of dumb names for bands and they picked one out of a list. Like the Goo Goo Dolls. Same thing. They had to pick a name, they picked that one. Why not? I
Right.
think if they'd have thought about it, they probably would have done something else. Like Electrofixation. That's a great name for a band.
Hmm.
But yeah, and after this, Ian McCullough released a solo album, which I really like, but it was missing something. He needed Will Sargent on that album. And the Echo and the Bunnymen album that they released in 1990 with the new singer was also okay, but it was also missing something. And I don't think they ever really got that back. Now, having said that, when I saw them live, it was like 4 years ago. It wasn't bad at all.
Hmm.
I want to say it was like 2019. It was that summer. Um, awesome, brilliant, beautiful, loved them. Um, but they were basically just playing the hits. Um, because it was a Thursday night show. They did a set, the Violent Femmes did a set, and everybody went home. Great show though. First time I ever seen anything in the Toyota Music Factory.
Hmm.
I love that venue. I love that
Yeah,
you can roll
I've
the
never been
doors
there.
up,
Yeah.
yeah, at the back and make it like an outdoor show, or you can roll the doors down and make it an indoor show with good AC. Because it was like 100 degrees outside, and I had to wear a jacket inside the venue with all the stage lights and everything else, and I was up pretty close. Um, great show, great show, great venue. Echo and the Bunnymen opened, and Violent Femmes closed. But yeah, these guys are amazing. It was one of those bands that I think kind of got slept on over here, except for the weirdo kids. Um, and then later on, I think they were appreciated. By 1989, I think everybody was pretty cool with them. Especially after they'd heard Lips Like Sugar, People Are Strange, um, The Killing Moon,
Hmm.
obviously. The people got more into them after they basically, well, they didn't, necessarily split up, but they split apart. Um, but they, in Liverpool, they were well loved. They were a pop band over there, but they were kind of an indie band over here. But but yeah, that's about it for those three albums from Echo and the Bunnymen. Other than get out and listen to them, uh, Porcupine's a little more experimental, but Ocean Rain is a masterpiece,
Hmm.
and Echo and the Bunnymen is good. It's just not as good as Ocean Rain.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. Well, thank you, Taylor, for taking us down another musical journey.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Gave me an excuse to listen to all three of those albums again.
With that, I'll step over onto the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off biography, Wikipedia, Britannica, Investigation Discovery, and I have had this one on my list for quite a while, just wasn't ready to dive into it yet. And this is the story of John Wayne Gacy.
John Wayne Gacey, the killer clown.
Yep. So, John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer and rapist who murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men in Cook County, Illinois, burying most under his house. As you had said, sometimes known as the Killer Clown for his habit of dressing in a clown costume and makeup, Gacey had an abusive childhood, shocker,
Mm-hmm.
and struggled with his homosexuality. Gacey committed all the murders in his Norwood Park home, luring his victims there with the promise of construction work or some other ruse, and then sexually assaulting and torturing them before killing them, usually by strangulation. Also, to attract teenagers for sex, Gacey converted his basement into a hangout where he provided alcohol and pornography.
Well, of course he did.
Uh-huh. He was arrested in 1979, and the following year he was convicted of 33 murders, and Gacey was executed in 1994.
Wow.
So, John Wayne Gacy was born on March 17th, 1942, in Chicago, to John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robison. His father, an auto repair machinist and World War I veteran, struggled with alcoholism and beat John and his two sisters with a razor strap if they were perceived to have misbehaved. John's father frequently belittled him.
Mm-hmm.
There's another of that McDonald triad,
There it is.
calling him stupid and comparing him disparagingly to his sisters. One of Gacy's earliest childhood memories was of his father beating him at age 4 for accidentally disarranging car engine components.
At 4.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Of course, you got something laying out. A 4-year-old's gonna pick it up and play with it.
Right.
That's what they do. That's kind of how their brain works.
His,
Okay.
his his mother tried to shield her son from his father's abuse, which resulted in accusations that he was a sissy, a mama's boy, and who would probably grow up queer.
Hmm.
Gacy's psychosexual history began at the ages between the ages of 6 and 10, when a teenage daughter of one of his mother's friends reportedly undressed and played with him. Gacey never told his father, afraid that his father would blame him. And Gacey was molested at a young age by a family friend and contractor, and between the ages of 10 and 12, Gacey and a friend were accused of sexually fondling a young girl. Gacey's father did whip him for this. He was sickly, overweight, and an uncoordinated child, and he was unable to perform at sports or bond with children of his own age. He suffered alienation at school, unable to play with other children due to congenital heart condition that was looked upon by his father as yet another failing. He experienced frequent seizures and blackouts as a teen and was regularly in and out of hospitals, though his father accused him of faking the ailments for attention. Gacey later realized he was attracted to men and experienced great turmoil over his sexuality. Despite not graduating from high school, Gacey attended and graduated from the Northwestern Business College in Chicago, and then worked as a salesman and manager at a shoe company. In 1960, at age 18, Gacey became involved in politics, working as an assistant precinct captain for a local Democratic Party candidate. And this led to more criticism from his father, who called him a patsy.
Wow.
However weird, that same year, Gacey's father bought him a car. He did, however, keep the vehicle's title in his own name until Gacey paid for it, which took several years, and his father would confiscate the keys if Gacey didn't do as he said. In April
Like
of
hold power over the kid.
uh-huh. Well, in April of 1962, Gacey purchased an extra set of keys, and in response, his father removed the distributor cap, keeping the component for 3 days. Hours after his father replaced the cap, Gacey left home and drove to Las Vegas with $136 to his name in the hope of residing with a cousin. He worked in the city's ambulance service before being transferred to Palm Mortuary, and he worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing morticians embalming bodies and occasionally serving as a pallbearer. He slept on a cot behind the embalming room and later confessed that one evening while alone, he clambered into the coffin of a teenage male, embracing and caressing the body before experiencing some sense of shock. This experience prompted Gacey to return home. In 1964, he met and became engaged to Marilyn Myers, whose father owned 3 KFC restaurants in Waterloo, Iowa. Gacey relocated there to manage the restaurants, and he and Myers had 2 children together. During their courtship, Gacey joined the local JCs, and that same year he had his second homosexual experience. According to Gacey, a colleague in the JCs plied him with drinks, invited him to spend the evening on his sofa, and then the colleague then performed oral sex on him while he was drunk. By 1965, Gacey had risen to the position of vice president of the Springfield JCs and was named the third most outstanding JC in Illinois.
Position of moral authority.
Yes.
Mm.
And power.
Yeah, power and moral authority.
Yes.
This is just getting worse.
Well, Gacey became a self-made building contractor and Democratic precinct captain in the Chicago suburbs in the late 70s. He later speculated his political involvement might have been an attempt to antagonize his father, who mocked his interest in politics. Gacey said, quote, "And maybe it was a way to get acceptance. I was always looking for acceptance because my dad made me feel I was never good enough." Well liked in his community, Gacey organized cultural gatherings and was active in political organizations in the JC Civic Group. Gacey later called this the happiest period of his life, and he even earned much coveted praise from his father, who said he had been wrong about Gacey. Gacey said, quote, "Back then I was thinking of running for alderman. After that, I wanted to go for mayor, and if that worked, I was going to run for the state senate. I didn't see any limits." Gacey was a member of the Chicago area Jolly Joker Clown Club and frequently performed in clown attire and makeup at children's parties, charity fundraisers, and other events as his alter egos, Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown. Years later, during a conversation with detectives while he was under surveillance, Gacey discussed his work as a clown, remarking, quote, "Clowns can get away with murder."
Mm.
In August 1967, Gacey sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr., the son of Donald Edwin Voorhees, who was a local politician and fellow JC.
Voorhees? Huh.
I know. I found
I
that
wonder if that's
interesting
where he
too.
got the name.
Right. I did too. I wondered that exact same thing. Those of you who don't know, Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th. Gacey lured Voorhees to his house with the promise of showing him heterosexual stag films regularly played at JC events. Gacey plied Voorhees with alcohol, allowing him to watch a stag movie, then persuaded him to engage in mutual oral sex, adding, quote, "You have to have sex with a man before you start having sex with women." Over the following months, Gacey abused several other youths, including one whom he encouraged to have sex with his own wife before blackmailing him into performing oral sex on him. Gacey also tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments for scientific research and paid them up to $50 each.
Oh, got the kid to have sex with Gacey's wife?
Yes.
So Gacey's wife knew about this?
Well, she at least knew about the kid having the sexual experience.
That's true. Okay.
In March of 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gacey had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gacey and charged him with performing oral sodomy on Voorhees and the attempted assault of 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gacey vehemently denied the charges and demanded to take a polygraph test, but the results of those tests were indicative of deception. Gacey publicly denied any wrongdoings and insisted the charges were politically motivated, as Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gacey's nomination for appointment as president of the Iowa JCs. Several fellow JCs found Gacey's story credible and rallied to his support. However, on May 10, 1968, Gacey was indicted on the sodomy charge. On August 30th, 1968, Gacey promised one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, $300 if he physically assaulted Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying in court. Schroeder lured Voorhees to an isolated country park, sprayed mace in his eyes, and then beat him. Voorhees did escape and reported the assault to the police, identifying Schroeder as his attacker, and they arrested him the following day. And while initially denying any involvement, Schroeder soon confessed to assaulting Voorhees, indicating he had done so at Gacey's request. Police arrested Gacey and laid an additional charge of hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate Voorhees. On November 7, 1968, Gacey pleaded guilty to one count of sodomy in relation to Voorhees, but not guilty to the charges related to the other youths. Gacey claimed Voorhees had offered himself to him and that he had acted out of curiosity, but his story was not believed. Gacey was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment to be served at the Anamosa State Penitentiary. That same day, Gacey's wife petitioned for divorce, requesting she be awarded the couple's home and property, sole custody of their 2 children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18, 1969, and Gacey never saw his first wife or his children again. Gacey was a model prisoner and was released on parole in the summer of 1970 after serving 18 months of his sentence. However, he got arrested again the following year after another teen claimed he lured him into his car and drove him to his house, where Gacey tried to force him into sex. The charges were dropped, though, when the boy didn't appear during the trial. And with financial assistance from his mother, Gacey bought a house on 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park, Illinois, where all of his future murders would take place. In 1971, Gacey started a construction business called PDM Contractors, which grew rapidly, became financially successful. And also that year, Gacey became engaged to Carol Hoff, who he dated briefly in high school. The two got married in 1972. Most of his employees at PDM Contractors were high school students and young men who he would proposition for sex, sometimes under the threat of violence. Gacey also claimed to own guns, once telling an employee, quote, "Do you know how easy it would be to get one of my guns to kill you? How easy it would be to get rid of the body?" Nevertheless, Gacey kept up a public front as a community man, hosting summer parties that were popular and well attended. On February 12, 1971, Gacey was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy who claimed he had lured him into his car at Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal and driven him to his home, where he attempted to force the boy into sex. The court dismissed the complaint when the boy failed to appear, but on June 22nd, Gacey was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct in response to a complaint filed by a youth who claimed that Gacey had flashed a sheriff's badge, lured him into a car, and forced him to perform oral sex. These charges were dropped after the complainant attempted to blackmail Gacey, and the Iowa Board of Parole did not learn of these incidents, so Gary's parole ended on October 8, 1971, and a month later, the records of Gacey's criminal convictions in Iowa were sealed.
Uh-huh.
Gacey committed his first known murder in January 1972 after luring the 16-year-old Timothy McCoy to his house for sex. The next morning, Gacey saw McCoy standing in the bedroom doorway with a knife and rushed to attack him, wresting the knife away and stabbing McCoy to death. Afterward, Gacey belatedly realized that McCoy hadn't been attacking or threatening Gacey, but was rather holding the knife because he had just made them breakfast. Nevertheless, this incident caused Gacey to discover he received sexual gratification from killing McCoy, and later said, quote, "That's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill."
Mm.
Gacey said he committed murder for the second time around January 1974. The victim remains unidentified. He was strangled and placed in Gacey's closet before burial. Gacey stated later that bodily fluids leaked from the victim's mouth and nose, staining his carpet, and Gacey regularly stuffed rags, the victim's own underwear, or a sock into the mouths of subsequent victims to prevent such leakage. In 1973, Gacey and a teenage employee traveled to Florida to view a property Gacey had purchased, and while there, Gacey raped the employee in their motel room. After returning to Chicago, this employee drove to Gacey's house and beat him in his front yard. Gacey told his wife that he had been attacked for refusing to pay him for poor quality painting work. Another of Gacey's victims was John Butkovich, an 18-year-old PDM employee whom Gacey lured into his house with the promise to discuss overdue pay. Once there, Gacey gave him alcohol, tricked him into putting handcuffs on, and then strangled him. The use of handcuffs at this point would become a frequent method for Gacey, who would sometimes tell his victims he was going to show them a magic trick. Butkovich's parents were suspicious of Gacey and called the police more than 100 times and urging them to investigate further, but they never did. 1 month
They already
after
knew the guy was a.
his records were sealed.
Oh, that's right.
1 month after his divorce was finalized, Gacey abducted and murdered 18-year-old Daryl Sampson. He was last seen alive in Chicago on April 6, 1976. Gacey buried him under the dining room with cloth lodged in his throat. On May 14th, 15-year-old Randall Raffett disappeared shortly after returning home from a dental appointment. Hours after Raffett was last seen by his family, 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton vanished as he walked home from his sister's apartment. He and Raffett were close acquaintances, and they were buried together in the crawl space, and investigators believe the two were murdered the same evening. On June 3rd, Gacey killed 17-year-old Michael Bonin, who disappeared while traveling from Chicago to Waukegan. Gacey strangled Bonin with a ligature and buried him under the spare bedroom. 10 days later, Gacey murdered 16-year-old William Carroll and buried him in a common grave in the crawl space. And Carroll seems to have been the first of 4 victims known to have been murdered between June 13th and August 6, 1976.
Good God. He was just on a spree.
Well, 3 were between 16 and 17 years old, and one unidentified victim appears to have been an adult. On July 26, 1976, Gacey picked up 18-year-old hitchhiker David Cram and offered him a job with PDM, and he began work the same evening. On August 21st, Cram moved into his house, and the next day, Cram and Gacey had several drinks to celebrate his 19th birthday, with Gacey dressed as Pogo. Gacey conned Cram into donning handcuffs, his wrist cuffs in front of his body rather than behind, and then he swung Cram around while holding the chain-linked handcuffs, and then he said he intended to rape him. Cram kicked Gacey in the face and freed himself. But a month later, Gacey appeared at Cram's bedroom door intending to rape him, saying, "Dave, you really don't know who I am. Maybe it would be good if you give me what I want." Cram resisted, straddling Gacey, who left the bedroom, stating, "You ain't no fun." Cram moved out on October 5th and left PDM. Don't know why it took so long for him to move out. Shortly afterwards,
Maybe he didn't
another.
have no place to go.
Yeah, that's possible. It's possible. Shortly afterwards, another employee, 18-year-old Michael Rossi, moved in. Rossi had worked for PDM since May 23rd of 76, and he lived with Gacey until April 1977. Rossi would sometimes assist Gacey in clowning at grand openings of businesses, Gacey as Pogo and Rossi as Patches. On August 5th, 16-year-old James Hackeson is last known to have is last known to have phoned his family, possibly from Gacey's home. Hackinson died of suffocation, and his body was buried in the crawl space beneath 17-year-old Rick Johnson, who was last seen alive on August 6th. By the middle of the 1970s, 2 more young men accused Gacey of rape, and he was questioned by police about the disappearances of others. Gacey referred to this period of his life as his cruising years, when he committed most of his murders. Most of his victims were buried on the property, with several placed in a common grave underneath his crawl space. One of his victims, a 17-year-old PDM employee named Gregory Godzik, told his family that Gacey had earlier ordered him to dig trenches in the crawl space at his home, and Gacey later told police he arranged this work to create spaces for graves. After Godzik went missing, his family contacted Gacey, who told them that Godzik had confided to Gacey that he had planned to run away from home. Gacey is thought to have murdered 2 unidentified males between August and October of 1976. On October 24th, Gacey abducted and killed teenage friends Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino. The 2 were last seen on Clark Street in Chicago. 2 days later, 19-year-old construction worker William Bundy disappeared after informing his wife he was to attend a party. He died of suffocation, and Gacey buried the body beneath his master bedroom. Bundy had apparently worked for Gacey as well. Then, between November and December of 1976, Gacey murdered 21-year-old Francis Alexander. His last contact with his family was a phone call to his mother sometime in November. He was not reported missing, as his family believed he had moved to California shortly thereafter. Alexander was buried beneath the room Gacey used as his office. Gacey killed several more victims during this time period, but one he left alive was Robert Donnelly, who was a 19-year-old college student he abducted from a Chicago bus stop. After bringing him to his house, Gacey raped and tortured Donnelly, dunking his head repeatedly in a bathtub until he passed out, performing fake executions with a gun loaded with blanks. Donnelly was in so much pain, he begged Gacey to kill him, but Gacey let him go and warned him not to tell anybody, but Donnelly did report him to the police. When officers investigated, Gacey said it was consensual sex slavery encounter, and the police believed him.
Why?
Because he was a fine, upstanding citizen. Gacey killed another victim 1 month later. On January 20th, 1977, Gacey lured 19-year-old John Sick to his house on the pretext of buying his Plymouth Satellite. He later confessed to strangling Sick in his spare bedroom, claiming Rossi was asleep in the house the following morning, and Gacey later sold the car to Rossi for $300. 2 months later, on March 15th, 20-year-old John Prestige disappeared. Prestige was last seen leaving a near Northside restaurant, and he was buried in the crawl space above the body of Francis Alexander. By the end of 1977, Gacey had murdered 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21. The first of these was 18-year-old Robert Gilroy, the son of a Chicago police sergeant, and was last seen alive on September 15th. Gilroy lived only 4 blocks from Gacey's house, and he would be buried in the crawl space underneath the house.
That's what got him, isn't it?
The Chicago police son?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Although if I recall right, his police father did end up getting involved in it later. That's not what got him. No. On October 17th, 21-year-old Russell Nelson disappeared. He was last seen outside of a Chicago bar. Nelson was looking for contracting work. Gacey murdered him and buried him beneath the guest bedroom. Less than 4 weeks later, Gacey murdered 16-year-old Robert Winch and buried him in the crawl space. 20-year-old Tommy Bowling disappeared on November 18th after leaving a Chicago bar. On December 9th, 19-year-old U.S. Marine David Talsma disappeared after telling his mother he was going to attend a rock concert in Hammond, Indiana. Gacey strangled Talsma with a ligature and buried him in the crawl space close to John Mowry. By 1978, Gacey's crawl space had no more space for bodies, and he started to dispose of his victims in the Des Plaines River from the bridge off Interstate 55.
That's not surprise. It's like that boathouse in Houston.
Yes,
You ain't got no place to put no more bodies.
Yeah, for Dean Coral, yeah. The first known victim from the bridge was 20-year-old Timothy O'Rourke. He was murdered in mid-June after leaving his apartment to purchase cigarettes. Shortly before his disappearance, O'Rourke had told a roommate that a contractor on the northwest side had offered him a job. On November 4th, Gacey killed 19-year-old Frank Langin. He was last seen alive by his father walking along Foster Avenue, and his naked body was found close to an inlet in the Des Plaines River by 2 duck hunters on November 12th. On December 11th, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Peast went missing after telling his mother he was going to meet Gacey to discuss a potential construction job. Peast's family filed a missing persons report with the police, which led to a search of Gacey's house in Norwood Park. This is the one that did it.
That's what got him.
Authorities discovered several suspicious items there, including police badges, a pistol, hypodermic needles, pornographic films, and items they later learned belonged to some of Gacey's victims. After this, there was a lengthy period of police surveillance and investigation, and police discovered a receipt at Gacey's house that belonged to Peast, contradicting Gacey's claim that he had no contact with Peast the day he went missing. This resulted in further searches of Gacey's house, eventually leading to the discovery of several trenches filled with human remains in the crawl space beneath his house. The area of the house had emitted a foul stench for years, but Gacey had told his house guests and wife that the smell was the result of moisture buildup. Gacey eventually confessed to killing about 30 people. In 1979, months after Gacey's arrest, his house at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue in Norwood Park, Illinois, was dismantled in an effort to find more evidence. The following year, the house and all structures on the property were demolished and a new house was eventually built on the property. I would not live in a house built on that property.
Me either. I hope they got it cheap.
Well, according to one worker involved in the demolition of Gacey's house, he said, quote, "If the devil's alive, he lived here." Gacey's trial began on February 6, 1980, with Gacey having confessed to the crimes. The arguments were focused on whether he could be declared insane and thus remitted to a mental state mental facility. Gacey spent hundreds of hours with doctors at the Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois, and underwent a series of psychological tests. Gacey tried to argue he had multiple personality disorder and that his mind was split between the personalities of a contractor, clown, politician, and police officer named Bad Jack. Gacey claimed Bad Jack hated homosexuality and viewed male prostitutes and some of Gacey's victims as, quote, scum, weak, stupid, and degraded. Gacey pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and he went on trial for 33 murder charges. The prosecution argued Gacey was sane and in control of his actions, pointing to the elaborate steps Gacey took to both prepare for and conceal his murders. The chief prosecutor, William Kunkel, said, quote, "These were certainly the acts of a man capable of premeditation, acting in his own best interest under duress and recollecting the details of his criminal activities." Mental health professionals testified for both sides about Gacey's mental state. On March 12, 1980, after a short jury deliberation, Gacey was found guilty of committing 33 murders, and he became one of the most ruthless serial killers in American history. He was imprisoned at the Menard Correctional Center in Chester for 14 years, appealing the sentence and offering contradictory statements on the murders and interviews. And although he had previously confessed, Gacey later denied being guilty of the charges and had a 900 telephone number set up with a 12-minute recorded statement declaring his innocence. While at
30
Menard,
bodies under his house.
I know, right?
How did he think that was going to work?
Right. I don't know. I don't know. While at Menard, Gacey took up studying the visual arts, especially painting. His paintings were shown to the public via an exhibition at a Chicago gallery, and many of his paintings depict Gacey as Pogo the Clown. In 2017, Mullock's Auctions in Shropshire, United Kingdom, auctioned off several of Gacey's artworks, as well as crime scene pictures from Gacey's trial. After the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear Gacey's final appeal in October of 1993, an execution date was set for May 10, 1994, at the Statesville Correctional Center in Crest Hill, Illinois. Before his death, Gacey said the victims' families would get no comfort from his death and accused the state of murdering him. His last words were reportedly, quote, "kiss my ass," but the prosecutor who tried the case and attended his execution said Gacey didn't speak in his final moments. Gacey was executed by lethal injection. Before the execution began, the chemicals used to effect the execution solidified unexpectedly, clogging the IV tube. The execution team replaced the clogged tube and the execution resumed. The entire procedure took 18 minutes. Anesthesiologists blamed the problem on the prison officials' inexperience in conducting an execution, and this error apparently led to Illinois adopting an alternative method of lethal injection. The prosecutor, William Kunkel, said, quote, "He got a much easier death than any of his victims." After Gacey's death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on May 10, 1994, his brain was removed, and it's in the possession of Helen Morrison, who is a witness for the defense at Gacey's trial, who has interviewed Gacey and other serial killers in an attempt to isolate common personality traits of violent sociopaths.
So we actually have his brain to study so he can stop making more serial killers.
Possibly. Well, don't beat him.
Yeah, don't beat your kids.
His body was cremated. In the years since Gacey's arrest, there have been lingering concerns that Gacey might have been responsible for the deaths of other people whose bodies have yet to be found. And when police uncovered human remains in Gacey's house in 1978, 8 bodies couldn't be identified. In July 2017, Cook County authorities used DNA evidence to identify one of those unidentified victims as the 19-year-old James Hackinson, who had been reported missing since '76. In October of 2021, DNA testing identified another of Gacey's victims as 21-year-old Francis Wayne Alexander, who also disappeared in 1976. A 1992 television movie titled To Catch a Killer reportedly explored the efforts to find out what happened to the missing teenage boys who were later discovered to be among Gacey's victims. The movie starred Brian Dennehy, Michael Riley, Margaret Kidder, and Dennehy, who played Gacey, was nominated for an Emmy Award.
He was really good too.
Well, according to Dennehy, Gacey wrote him a letter from prison protesting his portrayal in the film and proclaiming his innocence. In 2021, Investigation Discovery released The Clown and the Candyman, a two-part documentary about Gacey and serial killer Dean Corll, who we've covered previously. And Netflix released Conversations with a Killer, the John Wayne Gacey tapes, on April 20th, 2022, featuring interviews with people involved in the case and archival studio footage from Gacey's incarceration. It is the second entry in Netflix's Conversation with the Killer series, of the first of which was focused on serial killer Ted Bundy. And that is the story of John Wayne Gacey.
Well, thank you, sir. That was very interesting.
Yeah, I've been interested in covering Gacey for a while. It's just so much to get into. I need to dedicate some time to it. So finally decided it was time to dive into that and get that one off my plate. So thanks for taking that journey with me. I appreciate it as always. As a reminder, this is the end of our recording week. As a reminder, you can find more about what we talked about today on nerdyandmurdery.com. That's our website, the hub to everything we talk about. It does include pictures and links to everything we talked about today, as well as a link to our YouTube video, which Zig so often updates.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've got all the albums we talked about today.
Cool.
Sometimes in an individual song form as well.
Awesome. Definitely check that out. On our website, you can also find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your nerdery and murdy fandom, please do consider purchasing something from there. The items that are for sale there, along with our Patreon, do help with the cost of this show. Our patrons help donate to the show, help us keep going. There are costs involved with keeping us up on the air and keep producing the content that we're talking about for y'all. So please do consider donating if you're a fan.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. We appreciate each and every one of our patrons. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and others to find our content, to listen to the stuff we may be talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.